Hello, Scott.
I am muted. Hi, how are you?
Oh, not too bad. How about you?
Muted and invisible. Now I can be seen.
Yeah. Thanks for coming to give the talk. I have a bunch of Drummond, Reed, and Scott Perry say hi, but they are at other conflicting meetings. But I
Cool.
think they've seen
They
your
have.
content a bunch of times. And yeah, so I'm just pulling up. I'm pulling up. My brain is working at half speed today, which is not great
Me
for
too.
a
That's why
recorded
I've got
meeting.
this happening. That's why I'm feeding it actively. Yeah. Oh, you're doing water. That's smart.
Yeah, that's the downside of the clear container. Now everybody knows what I'm drinking, eh?
Yeah.
Okay, I am looking for the Confluence page with your ad so I can start the meeting. There's always people now are trickle in over the time. Um, and then the recording always gets very good traction.
Cool. Are you located in Canada?
Yeah, I'm in Guelph.
Awesome.
So, and where are you?
Chapel Hill, North Carolina.
North Carolina. Okay. Hey. Hi, Daryl.
Hello again.
Yeah, we meet again, eh? So you have uh, I'm gonna
Do you have a link,
wait.
by the way, Carly, for the review process, the review package? Is it in the form?
Everything is in
Perfect.
that one
I'll
Google
go.
Doc I shared, which has the
I
links to the form.
I will grab it. Thanks.
Mhm. I'm gonna do it. So hello everyone, welcome to Ecosystem and Governance Working Group meeting. We're going to have a presentation by Scott Jones from Realize coming up. First, we have to remind people that we are adhering to the meeting agenda and not participating in activities prohibited under antitrust and competition law. So, and members need to have signed the agreement, and I think everybody here has done so. Are there any new members? I don't know. No, there's no new members. Oh, maybe there are. Any new members, if you would like to introduce yourself now, or if you would like, you could also introduce yourself in the chat.
I'm probably new to this group. I'm Alexander van Welbake. I'm from TNO, so that's the Dutch Research and Technology Organization, independent organization. And I was triggered by the subject of today, so here I am.
Fantastic. Thank you. And any other introductions? Then I will move on to, uh, is there anyone here who wants to give a quick update of governance architecture? Okay, and then bite-sized trust, that's my task force. So we're continuing work and of course, always looking for input onto scripts. And then I will put up today's slide. We are going to be looking at Scott Jones is going to be presenting today. He's a VP of product at Realize.ai, human verification at scale. I'm curious about how you have 100 billion authentication calls. So looking forward to your presentation. And if you want to, oh, the whole time I wasn't sharing my screen, which is probably okay. So let me just put up the slide for Scott. So Realize authentication at scale. human verification at scale, lessons from 100 billion authentication calls. So I'm curious to see about all the authentication calls. Scott, if you want to start sharing your screen, looking forward to hearing your talk.
Are we recording still? Did you
Yes.
see? Okay, yeah, you did start again. Sorry.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you for reminding me. That would be a tragedy if I failed to record.
Mhm. Well, I really like the slide that you made. That looked really nice.
Thanks.
Thank you for having me, everyone. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Awesome. So the title is, as you see, it actually an increment of 25 billion above the one you just saw. So I'm Scott Jones with Realize. We're a computer vision company. We were founded in 2007, and we started in ad testing. And we, going back to that kind of 20-year history, started with models for measuring attention and emotion, and use those on behalf of the world's largest brands and agencies. To help them de-risk their media spend. And that was a business that's been running for more than a decade since the origin story back in 2007. I joined the company 3 years ago to lead a new platform business. When I joined, we were still focused on ad testing, but we had a really interesting pivot into identity. And I'll tell you more about that on the next slide. But part of the origin story actually set us up for unique differentiation and impact in the identity space. And this slide's really speaking to that. So coming out of the ad testing business, that's in the context of online market research. It's very much in the wild. You do not have hygienic controlled conditions, not to be off color, but you'll have people taking surveys from the bathroom, from their car, on the go. And the camera, by virtue of that, will be down here. It'll be over here. It'll be all over the place. And you're not getting these beautiful, beautiful images that you might desire to run authentication. And so the idea being, we came out of that environment and we built models that were extremely robust to handle conditions with bad lighting, weird angles, occlusions, like maybe part of your face can't even be seen, not pristine conditions. And then another differentiator was going back to the very beginning and the genesis of the models. We intentionally did not scrape data. We intentionally built an ethically sourced way to do this. And that was by designing and inventing a GDPR compliant consent framework, giving us rights to test and train models. And that ad testing business with that consent framework has generated a sort of war chest of very differentiated data. It's a data set of identities covering 6 million different people from more than 93 countries and the rights to test and train models on those faces. These businesses were coexisting since I joined 3.5 years ago. We got into the identity space. We were still part of the ad testing business, but right around the very beginning of Q4 last year, we demerged, which is a funny word. This is like the 5th time I've said that word out loud, but the idea, Verify and Realize split off from the ad testing business and became our own thing, really doubling down on the identity verification and the opportunities that we found getting into this market about 3 years ago. So the context of how we got in here, this was actually through an opportunity with a social media platform. We already had a relationship with them. And 3 years ago, they put out an RFI for a face verification model. We ended up winning their RFI, and they ended up, it took 1.5 years to get in production, but as of that moment, very end of 2024 and through 2025, they started ramping us up to great levels. And the biggest use case was actually account recovery. So the idea being, if a user across this consumer app company's platforms can't remember their password, or they think there's been an account takeover, the user has an option to submit a video selfie. The consumer apps pipeline extracts frames from that selfie, known profile photos, and if you've ever shown them a government ID, the image from that government ID, not the ID itself, just the image, sends all of that to our model and essentially asks, do you think this is Scott? Should I let him in? They have been rolling that out to, for lack of a better term, hyperscale. And for the past several months, that use case has gotten 500 million calls per day. This led us getting into this space. We were then wondering, well, all right, now we're in the identity space. Now my platform that I was hired to run has these building blocks for not just concepts of attention and emotion, but now identity. What other problems can we solve? And now that we've achieved this validation on scale that our technology can handle, and some of the additional reasons that we won on fairness and data provenance, and I'll speak more about that. The idea that, great, now we're in this space, what other problems can we solve? And that's where we saw that ad testing business actually gave us the target. Through that business, we had a front row seat for years now to the steady rise of fraud online. So I'm referring to bots, click farms, people lying about who they are. Huge problem in the internet large, obviously. In market research, it's truly insane. You can actually expect on the buy side, and the buyers do expect this, on average, 40% of what you get, and there's really no upper bound. It can keep going, but on average, 40% of what you get will be bad, and you honestly can't tell until you buy it. Double clicking on that problem in market research and then expanding to other verticals since, the realizations we had are really what's described on this page. On the left side, this notion of the gap and this idea of this continuum that has come to light that we see. So the realization that really the best thing you can do on the internet today is that heavyweight IDV check predicated on looking at a government ID, a liveness check to make sure this is a real human being, and a selfie to ascertain, yeah, real government ID belongs to Scott Jones in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. That's a real human being, yes, live in front of the camera. And I think that's the same person. Great for high stakes use cases. It's got all the benefits, high assurance. It checks the compliance box, but it's a lot of friction. It tends to take multiple minutes. It's quite expensive. It tends to cost $1 or more depending on who you're using and the volume you're at. And it's very invasive, and a lot of users will brush away from that. Churn rates for busting that out. Sorry, churn rates for presenting an IDV check in a onboarding funnel, for example, average around 40%, but can go higher. But all to say, that's the best you can do. And if you have to do it, awesome. But for lower stakes use cases or kind of the connective tissue of 99% of what we do online, it's too much. And if you say, okay, I don't want to do that all the time, what can I do that's less than that that still works? And that's where we see this sort of spectrum expressed on this slide. I'm keeping it simple by just referring to CAPTCHA on the left, but the left side is really inclusive of more solutions: CAPTCHA, device and network fingerprinting, bot detection, even things like SMS and email authentication. The realization we had that, for lack of a better way of saying it, traditional verification techniques that companies are relying on are obsolete and very challenged. You can literally go on YouTube today and learn how to hack around those systems, and many people are doing it. So what we capitalized on, or what we designed for, is that middle, that gap that we saw, this white space at the intersection of being extremely easy to use, but also providing a good amount of security. And what we built, it's a lightweight system. It's anonymous by design. It proves humanity. It proves uniqueness. Have you done this before? Have you onboarded to this platform before? Have you, depending on the use case, the idea of validating the uniqueness. Then confirmation of age and gender using models that we built. So being able to validate demographics. So you can't lie about who you are, but I don't need to see a government ID to prove that. And it's designed with very minimal friction. I'll show you a demo in a moment, but intentional to be as seamless an experience for the end user while still maximizing the security that we can get out of it. And as I mentioned before, we already have major platforms using this with profile photos, selfie frames, and even images off of IDs if they've already captured that. So the opportunity and what we've kind of focused on are these different use cases around re-verification, where sure, you might do IDV up front, you have to, but a lighter weight way that can kind of fill in the gaps. So you can keep saying, yeah, this IDV check day 0 told me that's Scott Jones in Chapel Hill. At the same time, I captured an embedding to verify, for example, and now I can keep checking back. Is it still that person it was day 0? And if it's never not, you can escalate to the heavier weight check. Part of the learnings we had, 2026 is the year of SMS decay. I'm kind of caffeinated right now. That's the way I'm saying it. But the idea that a lot of companies, a lot of people are shifting away from SMS because of the challenges I mentioned before. Not just that it's too easily hacked with SIM swapping and other modalities, but it can be very difficult. Like, it takes a lot of time. People are sick of copy and pasting. It can lead to conversion issues as well on those transactions. And then the idea being, well, where are they going from SMS? And 2026 is also kind of the rise of passkeys. And what we saw is passkeys do a lot of great things. Device-bound authentication, they're resistant to phishing, no password management, very, very simple, strong cryptographic binding, but they have some challenges. So one big challenge is uniqueness. You can have 10 accounts on one device. You could have 10,000 devices tied to one face. There's various ways to get past passkeys with the uniqueness challenge. Cross-device continuity is another one. Account recovery, if I have a passkey enabled and I lose my device, that can be very challenging. The idea of age and demographic validation, like, sure, this device is authorized, but is the person on the device the right age to have this experience they're trying to get into, for example? Continuity of control, which is a big theme, and I'll tell you more about that. But this idea of being able to make sure, sure, it was the right person who validated the passkey at the start of the session, but if are they still there? Is it still that person, or did they give it to someone else? And then various fraud signals that can be generated. So the idea really distilling down that takeaway at the bottom, passkeys prove this device is authorized, but not necessarily it's the right person holding it. And then this idea that another learning and opportunity that we're really leaning into is multiple verification methods. And here distilling it down into two. But the idea, you have this very classic concept of upfront verification. So it's a gate getting into an experience. Account creation and onboarding, age gate compliance, things like that. Generally thought of as a one-time check where you say, cool, I check the box, you're good to go, proceed with your session. But the challenges there are many. And these are things that we see actively with the work we're doing in different markets where, sure, that upfront check can validate it's the right person at that moment, but then they can, if it's a gambling app or a gaming app, I could be a kid and have my dad look at the phone and approve me, and now I'm playing the game or the gambling that I'm actually not age compliant to participate in, just as one example. Gig economy is another one where this is a huge vector of fraud. People sharing accounts, sharing credentials. They're trying to tighten the vice on it, but there is no lightweight capability they're aware of yet that can validate, sure, that was the right Uber driver or the right delivery person at the start of the session, but is it still as they're driving the car, as they're showing up at this customer's location? And what these companies are finding is often it's not, and they're struggling to fill those gaps. So this notion of continuous verification that can run in the background and make sure, validate that holder binding is still correct, and the relevance across a variety of verticals like gig economy, gaming, gambling, remote proctoring, shared workstation environments, and more. So what we've got is a spectrum of verification. We actually refer to it as progressive verification, where you can have very lightweight passive checks that can run in the background if you've already done the heavier weight one. To make sure, are you still there? Are you still really a human? And are you still the right human? Basic liveness that requires very little lift from the user, but is still robust. And for those moments where you say it's a high stakes moment, something weird's going on, frog signals are flaring, irreversible sort of transactions, et cetera, being able to pull the lever and say, all right, I want to do like the state of the art, heaviest liveness check with some choreography on the user to really, really put them through it and make sure that this is a secure moment. Let me show it to you in action. So I believe you should still see my screen with human verification.
Yep.
Yeah, cool. So at the bottom you see this is, and I can share the link after so you all can play with this, but at the bottom is an expression of that sort of spectrum of the verification types. So low friction, designed to run in the background, high security, which is a pretty advanced liveness check, and then balanced is a very easy liveness check, and that's the one I'll show you now. I'm going to walk through a demo use case. It is not speaking to me. I don't do this, but it's a popular example. So let's pretend I'm onboarding to a dating app, and I am creating a profile claiming to be a 20-year-old woman. And I have just configured that profile, and the dating app says, great, let's get you verified. So we kick this off. The first steps, I'm presented with the GDPR compliant consent framework we've invented. Conceptually, you can imagine it a lot like the capture, the next evolution of it. You're proving you're human, but it's very simple. There's no puzzles. All you have to do is briefly turn your camera on. In the spirit of GDPR and CCPA, I get access to a privacy policy and a path to ask questions or update my consent if I want to be forgotten. I say, great, let's do this. So we get access to the camera through the browser. I've given that access. I'm now coming a bit closer. We just capture an image, send it to an endpoint hosting my system. The image is fed in and then deleted. So again, it's an anonymous system. We're not storing pictures of people's faces. We use the image to generate a face embedding bespoke to my model. And then we provide these layers of validation. So the first is liveness. Extremely likely, I'm a real human being. I'm not wearing a mask. I'm not a deep fake. I'm not presenting an image on a screen or a photo. Secondly, I'm unique. I don't already have a profile on this dating app. And by virtue of that, I've been assigned a fresh face ID. And let's just remember these last 4 digits because we'll see them again, DE65. Thirdly, I was claiming to be a 20-year-old woman. This dating app knows in real time, very likely a human. They're unique. They don't have an account on my profile, but they're lying. They're not a 20-year-old woman. And they could decide how they want to treat me. So let's pretend I went through that experience. I onboarded to the dating app. Now I'm back outside and I'm opening up a new fraud vector. I am creating an entirely new account pretending to be someone else. I've just filled out that account. Again, I'm presented with this verification step. Again, I give consent. Again, a bit closer. Image captured, sent to that endpoint, and my face embedding compared to existing face embeddings of accounts on that dating app. And here I failed on uniqueness. And you see this face ID was what I matched to with the DE65 at the end that I just created moments ago. So in the context of the demo I just gave, this is a fail on that uniqueness check and able to say, hey, this person already has an account. And in fact, this is the one. This also demonstrates authentication. So if I were claiming to be this person, I was just matched back, say, yeah, that's the right person. And this is what that social media company is doing at hyperscale for account authentication. Does that make sense?
Yep. Actually, I have a real quick question. Can I ask a quick question?
Please.
So, I have scientific background training. So I always, when I see a number, I'm like, oh, what are the error bars on that number? Because your age estimate changed slightly. I imagine for a consumer-facing product, you would never put age error bars on your system. But uh,
I have data on well, first off, the technology that we provides confidence levels, and depending on the use
yes.
case of what you're trying to solve for, we can even dispatch different models. So, for
Yep.
example, the very, like I say, classic, but the very common use case in today, certainly this year and last year, is age verification, looking at that 18-year-old threshold. We've
Yep.
built the model tuned for that, and the idea is we would actually be measuring the confidence that this user's over 25. And as that confidence degrades, if I don't think they're over 25 or I'm really not sure, then that would be a signal that I think you want to do an ID check because I'm not sure. But
Right.
for those where it's like very clearly over 25, yeah. So that's just an example of kind of the mechanics of it. Depending on what you're trying to solve for, we could provide a model that would be tied to that. And then the tuning of like the heuristics of how you would use the telemetry. And as you noted, yes, there is the state of the art with age estimation models is there is drift, and that's just part of the game too. So again,
Yep.
if you really need to know, is that guy 41 or 43? It would be like again, you'd have a model kind of tuned for.
Documentation. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay. Awesome. Thanks.
sure. So digging in behind the scenes again, part of what we were very intentional about, I mentioned it a bit, as a privacy architecture. So the idea being not having a centralized like global biometric database by principle. The idea here is instead that these collections can be tuned to different levels of granularity, community levels for that consumer app company. It's around their user base. You can imagine going as big or small as you want, rather than saying, no, this is a single biometric database that everyone's in. Other aspects of it is we are working on client-side processing. So in that model, the biometric never leaves the device, only cryptographic proofs, and we're actively working on bringing ZKPs into that. The other is the embeddings themselves. It's an irreversible transform. However, just double clicking on IETIS and all of the work that was done codifying that policy, all the learnings I had is I understand the lawyers were torturing mathematicians and saying, like, holding a gun to their head and saying, all right, I need to know, you're saying it's irreversible. What if someone had quantum computers and God himself backed the project and like whatever? And they're like, all right, technically it's like non-zero if all these crazy impossible things happen, but in reality, no, it's like impossible. So holding that line here, we're saying under normal conditions, they are irreversible. And then very intentional, we're not storing images long-term. We might store them temporarily for like system tuning and troubleshooting, but not long-term, and they get deleted by default. And then customers control retention policies, and then we act in the spirit of GDPR as a data processor. And there's multiple models in play. So client side, cloud, on-prem, which is what that consumer app company is doing, and others as well. We have a gig economy company running us on-prem as well. So we generally try to be like water and furnish the integrations that are most suitable depending on what you're trying to solve for. And then this idea of the scoped uniqueness, which I didn't just, I should have said it that way on the last slide, but the idea that being able to control your own subgraph of trust relationships as the DTG working group defined. So the centralized approach, which is well known, requires a global biometric database. It can include specialized hardware if we're looking at some players out there, and a lot of privacy and sovereignty concerns, and that can lead to a lot of friction with rolling out these solutions. A lot of skepticism in government saying, "Well, I'm not sure about that," and potentially users too. So the idea of our approach is community scoped. You can define what is the granular level of that trust ecosystem, and our technology can run on any device with a camera. We've been live for years now on phones going back to like 2010 all around the world. No global index required, and then the ecosystems can control their own policies. So a thought on how we could fit into the trust over IP stack, seeing it as that layer one of trust support with biometrics, keys, and storage, and the idea that Verify can provide a user binding interface, a biometric holder binding, liveness and anti-spoofing for those cases where it's necessary and you want to escalate. Personhood credentials, being able to validate age and demographic claims, and then the notion of uniqueness. Coming back to fairness, this is a big part of our differentiation, why we won with that consumer app company and how we're very much differentiated from many players who are out in the market with face models. What we've found and again, we were very intentional going back to the kind of genesis of the ad testing business and how that business came to be over years was sourcing a data set of several million identities from more than 93 countries, including the global South, and having GDPR compliant consent giving us the rights to test and train models on those faces. Using that data set, building these models, our R&D team is being extremely intentional on demographic fairness. So making sure and enforcing coverage in the data we use for testing and training that is comprehensive across skin tones, age, and gender, and the concatenation of all those things. And what that means is our models work in real life. You don't have to provide a pristine image. We work with challenging angles, challenging lighting, and it's generally like more robust and easier to use. And that's been part of why we've been so successful with that consumer app company and why they rolled us out. It's just so simple. And it solves the problem without the user having to jump through hoops and like trying again, which is a common issue in the market. And from that tagline at the bottom, the idea that the thought that verification systems that only work for some people in hygienic conditions are potentially not what you would call a verification system, but maybe an exclusion system, because that can how it can feel to the user, like, hey, I'm doing the thing. Why isn't this working? And the thought that fairness should really be a feature and a prerequisite, or sorry, it's not a feature, it's a prerequisite for having really inclusive trust ecosystems that are globally effective. Some additional learnings. The first one, iconography, was interesting as a product person. When you think about trying to tell stories to people visually and not have to be there to narrate it along the way of what the user's doing here, what exactly they're being presented with. We evolved a lot on how we present this. We started with an emoji. I don't have a screenshot of that, but imagine like kind of a friendly smiley face in the context of getting a photo. Then we shifted to this icon of a person holding a camera. And then we've shifted to a more abstract visual cue of this iconography, which has been the most effective so far. And this obviously will never be done, and it's not one size fits all. It really is tied into what we found is variations in demographics globally, the psychology of different people, educational attainment, if you're a man or a woman, women in Muslim countries being the least likely or the most concerned with giving consent to a system like this. So there's like, you can imagine this matrix of possibilities of how to provide the best experience to get users to want to participate in this, such that it makes sense. Another one that was interesting was server versus client. And even there, a redirect solution. So we originally built a redirect solution when we started in the market research market, when we took the building blocks we built for the consumer app and started saying, hey, I think I can solve problems here, we started in market research and we built a redirect solution thinking that it would just be for proof of concepts, but no one would want to run that in production. It turned out everyone wanted to run that in production. It's a no-code system. It's got turnkey compliance. All you have to do is draft your own privacy policy. And then we handle everything else behind the scenes. But then for other clients, they did not want that. Like that consumer app company, they are actually running an SDK we provided with a Docker container in a private data center disconnected from the public internet. And then we have another customer doing the same. And then this notion of the client side, where depending on the use case, that's very relevant. And depending on how that might manifest in getting permissions from app stores, for example, to have a biometric system running inside of an app. So depending on like all the trade-offs there is no single, oh, it's obvious they're going to want this. It's more like, oh, there's nuance there about how this could be integrated. And then the big one about the community scope differentiation versus global uniqueness is just the headaches and the blockers that global uniqueness presents. Our early assumption was we should probably go after global uniqueness too, but the reality is that most trust ecosystems will not need to go big and global, but rather they'll have their own governance framework and kind of the aperture that they need. And the global approach raises sovereignty, privacy concerns, and is just a huge headache for companies going after that. So kind of just figuring out and stumbling in to the realization that our approach is inherently different and can be valuable for that. So with all the learnings, looking at where we're going, where we see this journey going in the innovation roadmap. So edge first architecture is something we're actively working on this quarter. Client-side SDKs for iOS and Android by the end of this quarter, which will unlock on-device processing. They'll be compatible with wearables. They'll be compatible with all sorts of systems and have no dependency on the cloud. Micro embeddings is actually another part of that project work to run on the client side with a very small footprint. So by the end of this quarter, having embeddings that are 512 byte size that could even fit on NFC cards, which are conversations we're actively having about where this could go to solve problems with holder binding. Offline is an opportunity that gets opened up when you're on the client side. You don't need an internet connection. You just need to make sure, hey, is this the right person in front of me right now based on the embedding I already have? And then zero knowledge proofs tied to biometrics is a passionate area that I'm very excited on, where on the client side, you can have ZKPs, but then on the server side, you can as well. It gets a little hand wavy here. It's not a solved problem, but it's one that is very interesting, where at the intersection of those, you could verify one person, one credential without having to link to an identity. Deepfake detection in the bottom left is something where that consumer app company we're working with asked us to get into this. We've got a pretty novel system we're working on. Again, it's leveraging that proprietary data set we have of millions of people with consent. And the approach we're taking is to have a library of all the latest and greatest tools, deepfake tools that are popular, continually generate instantiations of what they produce, and then have models trained for each of them. So you can imagine this pipeline being able to analyze on the fly, like, hey, that's VO3 at play right now, or this is this other system at play, with high confidence being able to call that out. And then another one that's really interesting, AI agent custody. I started having conversations about this last summer with people in the DID and SSI space, and the opportunity being that a biometric binding enables individuals to claim custody of agents or not, or say, no, that's not my agent trying to move. I'll make myself sound glamorous, trying to move $1 million. That's not me doing that right now. And being able to attest that through a methodology where I could validate I am who I'm claiming to be without having to reveal exactly who I am. Sorry, my video cut off there. Maybe I can come back to life. It's not looking good, huh? Not sure what happened to my video. So a case study here of a real life integration that is ongoing. We're working with, I always stumble on saying it, Cyros, I believe, and the WW wallet. So we have an active integration going right now. High level flow of it. Imagine a user verifies via the verify system you saw in the demo to validate they are a human. They get a personhood credential stored in their WW wallet. then the user can present that credential to a verifier, and then the verifier confirms without having to see the biometric itself. That's the very high level version of it, as I'm sure all of you can imagine, a lot more nuance under the hood, but that's the headline of the story. They were originally, WW Wallet was originally working on a CAPTCHA proof inside of the credential, but we met them in December and they said, hey, a personhood proof sounds really cool. Let's do that instead. So the user can prove humanity once, the credential gets stored in their wallet, and then they can produce it across sites wherever they go. With that, we're exploring browser native integrations, passkey and credential binding, kind of leveraging the passkey story we saw earlier, and then selective disclosure. So it could be a personhood proof, but it could also be an adult proof that, yeah, I'm a human and I'm over 18 and I'm entitled to come into this gambling site, for example. Open questions, there are many more, but just to distill it down to a slide. Holder binding at content creation. How do you minimize the friction while ensuring it's the right person who's creating the credential? There's many dueling philosophies there that we're trying to wrestle with. The credential refresh intervals, like how long, what is the recency or freshness of a credential being issued before you'd want to say, hey, Scott, I need to make sure you're still that right human again. So what is the runway you give them before, or what signals might you need to look at that might want you to force that to happen sooner? Privacy preserving revocation. So how can you revoke credentials without creating a trackable event? That is an interesting pickle that we've been talking about. And then cross ecosystem uniqueness. So that idea of you could be playing in a sorry, it looks like my virtual background was breaking my video. Whoops. You could be playing in a community defined of a certain granularity, but if you want to be able to measure uniqueness across those different communities, how could you and should you even be able to do that? And then we're exploring ZKP, as I mentioned before, so being able to, and tying that into the wallet so you can prove uniqueness without revealing identity across trust ecosystems. Collaboration opportunities, by virtue of having this call and others I've had, we're very actively trying to reach communities like this because we're doing interesting things and we know you are too, and we would love to collaborate because this is a pretty fascinating time to be a human, and there's kind of a dystopian world taking shape, but I think also an exciting opportunity to partner up with like-minded people to solve problems in really compelling ways that might not have been possible before. So this camera works, I'll use that. So just going across a few columns of what this could mean. Standards, we're actively talking with W3C on how we might be able to tie into their holder buying confidence method. Actively looking to align with trust over IP. Presented to the first person project, time's moving fast, but I believe that was January. And looking for collaborators there, as well, just personhood credential schemas in general. Integrations, as I mentioned, we're active with the WW Wallet, working on that, which also ties into the IETIS wallet ecosystem, but seeking collaborators for other wallet providers, trust registries, or potentially other systems I'm not even thinking of right now. And then research, as I mentioned, very active in deepfake detection in a pretty progressive way that's unique, tied to our proprietary data set. And then fairness testing frameworks and kind of a different take on responsible AI. I didn't say it this way before, but just part of our journey getting into the identity space is very much positioned in a unique way with responsible AI on that data provenance, on the demographic fairness across the global South, and really just trying to raise that awareness that you don't have to kind of in this AI backdrop we're in right now, the Wild West, where it's just assumed you're going to have stolen data and racist models. Like we're intentionally the inverse of that. So if folks wanted to collaborate on that. And then we're very much looking into zero knowledge proof applications, privacy preserving, holder binding, and more. So if any of these resonate, I would love to talk to you about it. And that is the last slide. I'll say it out loud. Let's build trust infrastructure together. I think it's a good statement.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Very nice, Scott. Probably you solved a piece of the puzzle. I just introduced myself as being from TNO Dutch Research and Technology Organization with a focus on IIDIS and privacy preserving user binding to prevent fraud with IIDIS wallets. So perhaps we should talk on next steps. Uh, one question I'd really like to verify, is it really true that no information leaves the customer's device when processing the biometrics?
In the client-side modality, that is correct. Yeah.
Yeah, because that would leverage a legal opportunity within Europe to make use of the domestic use of biometrics, which is far more easy than any other way of doing so.
Yeah, I would love to talk to you about that more. When you joined the call, you said the subject triggered you, so I wasn't sure if that was going to be a happy trigger or a bad trigger, but it's good to know it's a happy trigger.
No, it's a happy trigger, and I'm pushing forward in the Dutch ecosystem and also in the European ecosystem. So I just sent you a LinkedIn invite.
Awesome.
Let's continue the conversation.
Cool. I will follow up with a scheduling link to have a call.
Yeah, and my colleagues, not I, are very experienced in developing zero knowledge proofs. So perhaps we can assist you here.
Very cool.
Fantastic. Scott, you have a question?
Yeah, so I apologize. I had a conflict and I just joined, so I didn't hear the beginning, with Scott and such. But I have been aligned with Realize for quite a while. And the reason being, and I wanted to share this, is I've been involved in the identity verification business for 25 years as an identity auditor. So in the X509 world, there would be breeder documents for long history, breeder documents that usually are derived from I-9 in the United States, because I worked under the federal PKI, and I-9 is a list of different combinations of physical documents to prove that you are who you say you are. And, that has been in place for quite a long time. It's very static and it has issues associated that this group would understand with, physical documents the way they are and the frauds associated with them. So as we start to transition to relying on, other means than just physical documents to prove that I am human, prove that I am who I say I am, we need alternative methods to do that work. And I think that Realize is one of the few that have had, a long history of investigating that issue and coming up with real-time, high assurance means in order to provide the information that's needed to support digitalized verifiable credentials.
Thank you for that. Good to see you again, Scott.
What about the Open Wallet Foundation? Have you made any connections there?
Daniel Goldscheider.
Okay.
And he actually connected me to, and again, I'm going to say it wrong, Cyros.
Cyrus, okay. Or
Oh,
Cyrus, I have no idea. Excellent. Okay, thanks. Mackie.
Yes, Scott, like really a great presentation. And I think, it's really aligning well with, whether the decentralized trust graph, and, the TOIP stack overall. My question was with respect to the next step as it comes to securing, offline communications. So what's in mind? Are you exploring, for example, like Bitcom, or what kind of protocol are you looking at?
I have not gotten to the protocols yet. It's good to see you again. I reached out to book a call sometime last year, and I would love to do it again to pick your brain about this if you're open to it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Awesome.
Radar.
Okay, I've got a question. Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Very well.
I was thinking that as we have those deep fakes evolving, it's gonna be like a constant kind of battle about like context about person, having more context than the attacker and being able to verify a person. And are you exploring, for example, another vector than face, like hand palm patterns or movement of the hand to also like add something else than a face as a secondary or tertiary part to the process. Event could be, for example, selected by a person mark, which is common, for example, on passport, like wrinkles or something like that, where the person would get like prompt, show right part of your hand or where you have wrinkle or this kind of methods.
So I think part of what you described at the end was that almost like the liveness choreography of turn your head this way, turn your head that way. Is that what you were describing at the very end?
Yeah, generally like more parts of body identify,
Yeah.
which have like special unique patterns that we can identify a person, not just by face, because face might be also prone to replay attacks where somebody captures and is able to model or show some video from other platform that person verify that.
Yep, I think there's a whole rabbit hole behind your question of exciting opportunities. You've mentioned some good ones. I believe the kind of zeitgeist of relying on I'm going to call it choreography again, for lack of a better term, but relying on challenging the user. I think people are generally saying, well, if you're using a deepfake system, you're probably going to be able to get past that. The work we're doing with the model development for deepfake detection is designed to pick up temporal and image-based artifacts, which you can do now still, but maybe in the future you won't be. It'll be stuff like I'm wearing glasses and it would be like distortion, like very micro stuff that happens that a human wouldn't see, but a vision AI system can. You mentioned some interesting things like telemetry off the device. Those are on my mind for various use cases. I'll give one example. It's not deepfakes, but it's adjacent enough that I think it could inspire some thinking where we're working on this notion of continuous verification in the gig economy. And the idea of being able to kind of surreptitiously, the user's already given consent to this, but being able to say, sure, you were the right driver for this food pickup at the start of the session, but now you're driving and you're looking at your GPS. Are you still the right person? Or now you're walking up, I think this is what they would kind of do. Walking up as a customer, I've kind of seen this, walking up to talk to the customer and say like, I'm outside your hotel room right now or whatever. That's a moment where the gyroscope could tell me the phone is in an upright position. And other signals like that could indicate, I think the person's holding it right now. Therefore, it's probably a good time to get one of those surreptitious images to do a continuous verification. I do think telemetry like that would be valuable. So you could know, yeah, is there actually a human even holding this right now? Others that are interesting get into the device itself. And this is going to conflate a bit between like bot systems and deep fakes, but potentially could be a relevant thought. The idea of if you are on the client side, you'd be able to know if the operating system has been breached. You'd be able to know some interesting stuff about the device. You'd be able to know like the if the camera's real, synthetic, or if there's been hacked at all. So I do think there's a world of possibilities. We could probably talk for hours about identifying them and then triage the ones to go after.
Thanks.
Drummond.
Yeah, yeah, I too missed the very start of it, Scott, because but I got in just when it got compelling. And I just want to say I'm really glad. I'm excited to hear about the work with Ciro's first person project. Also working very closely with Ciro's, as you know, and there's just you made just a bunch of progress in areas. I want to follow up with you. I'm down in LA to speak at a conference here today, but I'll be back in Seattle next week. So let's just find a time to drill down into some of these things and figure out, as you said, let's build a trust infrastructure together.
Sounds awesome. It looks like you're on the floor of the forest in Big Sur, actually.
Actually, I took this particular picture on a hike in the Cascades. I was just overwhelmed by the height of the trees there. So my GitHub handle is tall tree because I've I grew up in the Northwest. I just love tall trees.
That's awesome.
Nice. Any other questions? Jorge.
Hey, Scott, good stuff. Thank you for presenting. I got a couple of technical questions for you. So I come at this from a implementer's perspective, so I've got some experience implementing similar technologies. We've ended up backing off of this for the time being, just given just apprehension from the community that we're trying to serve. And it's just people generally, especially here in the US, given everything that's going on with immigration raids and surveillance of American citizens and whatnot. Have you experienced or are you seeing pushback from consumers or users on this type of technology?
Man, that is a profound question that can go in different directions. Part of our journey, so I can speak to part of our journey with that consumer app company. Biometrics were a no-go for them going back like 5 years. They had some publicity issues with a feature they rolled out, and then they went to the market and said, we're never doing biometrics again. They had some legal issues. They were getting sued around the world for some challenges, including users not being able to get back in their accounts because they were relying on manual techniques that didn't work. So that gave them a catalyst to say, all right, well, we've got this face verification model from Realize. Let's make a case on solving the problem with this. Part of the diligence on that was empowering their product teams with research that we took both from our own work, rolling this solution out globally for a few years, and just research kind of at large about society, expectations of users, et cetera. And generally what we were seeing is this is getting more normalized. I'm going to be really high level and say it's getting more normalized globally. There's certainly countries where you're seeing stuff like this all over the place. I know China's one. I think you're seeing it a lot more in Europe than we are in the US, and through parts of Asia. But if we double click even more, I think in the US, there are going to be challenges. It depends on who I talk to with different use cases I'm exploring. Some people will say, oh, you could never do that in the US. And others are saying, no, you can do that. So I think it depends. I think a big part of it is the value exchange and the education and calling out what's unique and different. So for example, the privacy-centric philosophy we have is something I would want to be very clear in describing and differentiating. Like this is not, I don't want to pick on World ID, but Sam Altman is a figure where he's polarizing. So I can say, this is not a project with Sam Altman trying to create a centralized database. This is something that's different. It's an anonymous system designed to protect your sovereignty as a user. So you can't lie and you can't cheat and you can't steal, but you don't have to reveal who you are. So I think it's part of the storytelling on that. Plus the normalization. Plus, I think there's a subtext here, and it's not a subtext anymore. I'll take that word back. It's this rising trend that people are kind of waking up and seeing this AI. The positive word is the AI renaissance. The negative spin on it is the AI sort of fraud vector that's coming up, where there's going to, I think this is going to get even more normalized, because right now I was on a webinar end of last year where we were talking about identifying users as a product leader and what's your framework for that. And I said, I think we're already in a world where you have a 2x2. Are you a human or a bot? And are you good or bad? And the idea that you can jump between those boxes. So I could onboard as a good human, and a typical pattern is I replace myself with a machine 30 days later. In this sort of world, I think humans are going to want to protect themselves more and say, I want to protect myself from bad bots acting on, or agents acting on my behalf. And I want to get access to things. And I think a tool like this with this philosophy would be very compelling. But again, it's a communications thing. It's overcoming kind of the trauma of the surveillance state fears and presenting it as an alternative. I'm making it sound kind of level and hand wavy, but I think there is an opportunity to change hearts and minds. You just have to position it.
Yeah, there's no question in my perspective, there's no question the technology is powerful, and it, from a user experience, if implemented correctly, it does solve a lot of user friction issues, right? It just works. It works. I'm amazed at how quickly it works with the liveness. And account recovery is another use case that it's straightforward, right? Like, other methods of, sharding keys and, whatnot, like multiple users having to get involved on multiple devices. That's just too complicated for the average user. So I just think there's got to be a way to find a good balance.
Yeah,
Uh,
and the cost, just to jump on what you said, the cost associated with that, like the operational overhead of account recovery workflows is very
right.
expensive to support.
Yeah. Question on if you don't mind, on the embeddings that you mentioned. Is that not a form, a mathematical vector? Is that not a form of a biometric template? Like, could you not do a match, a 2D match or a 3D match against an embedding?
You're saying back to like a source image?
Yeah. So the embedding, this is the biometric template that comes out of your technology, right, that's stored somewhere on a server. So in theory, like you should be able to do a match against that, right? Or you can.
The currency of our uniqueness checks or authentication is embedding to embedding. And I'd probably need to connect you to somebody who could have this conversation better than me. But the the idea being the embeddings themselves are irreversible back to the image, and the images are not retained. So they're essentially like these hashed sets of 512 data points that are kind of meaningless unto themselves. Meaningless to tie back to an identity.
Sure. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, okay, fantastic. Are there any other questions then from our membership here? If not, then I would like to thank Scott for a fantastic talk about Realize and the facial and liveness and age and all of that with the privacy components. Really nice to see that technology. And in the chat, if you hadn't seen it, there was a LFDT blog post about from events last week. So before you go, maybe open that up and have a read through about what we're doing here at LFDT. So thank you very much, everyone. And we will rework this recording as well and put it up. The whole meeting gets recorded, and then we do make a more shareable version of the meeting with images and stuff like that. So look for that soon. So with that, I'll end the meeting and thank you again for attending.
Thank you very
Thanks a
much.
lot. Thank you, Scott.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.